You introduced a kind of more of a genuine project around this, around transparency and around the well-being of your people. And since that's been implemented, what kind of things have you noticed in terms of the changes that have taken place?
One thing that I would always share, and I still do, is it's okay not to be okay. So if you're not having a super great day, someone else is. And that's where the value and the power of teamwork comes in. And this is a mantra that I share with all of the teams that I've fostered throughout the years is we're a village, right? We are a connection and we are there to have each other's back.
It's Janine Pajot.
Correct.
Excellent. And you are the Senior Vice President of HR at Bayer, correct? Bayer Canada.
Vice President.
Vice President. EVP. Okay. Okay. So I think you've obviously got a rich experience. We know from this you've led commercial divisions.
Yes.
You are an authentic voice in people strategy, I would suggest. Would that be fair? And so
That's very fair.
That's very fair. So let's start there. You've obviously started from somewhere. You've got to where you are now. Tell us a little bit about that journey, and you know, we'll explore other things along the way. But just briefly tell us how you've got to where you are.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be able to, chat about this really important topic. It's a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. My career journey has been quite diverse over the years. So I grew up in the pharmaceutical industry and, started on the commercial side doing sales, marketing, communications, strategic planning, all of these wonderful, wonderful opportunities with a few different companies, all multinational, all with a matrix type environment. So a lot of complexity along the way in terms of the type of organization I've been with, and all in the life science realm. And throughout those years, I think where I've developed as a leader is just really tapping into the power of people and teams. And I come from the mindset that, knowing your business, that's just cost of entry. You need to know your business. You need to know your customers. But it's through the people in your organization, it's through the teams that you lead that you really generate the results, that you really grow and innovate. Innovation doesn't come from a machine. It comes from people. So that's been my mantra throughout my career and throughout the years. And I think it's that love of people that made me want to do a bit of a career switch. So as I mentioned, I've been in the life science industry since the start of my career on the commercial side. But in 2018, I made a bold move and I applied for the role as vice president for human resources here in Bayer, Canada, and went up against externals, internals, and ultimately was afforded the opportunity to make that switch. And I think I probably surprised a lot of people by making that change because, at that point I was already heading up our general medicine division, which is cardiovascular, women's healthcare. Is a $500 million Canadian dollar business. So needless to say, I probably surprised a few people by making that switch, but I felt a calling. I felt a calling to do something that was closer to the people, closer to, as I mentioned before, what I believe is the actual engine of an organization. So made that switch and, it's been a tremendous learning journey. So many changes, several global transformations, new tools, new processes, new global performance reviews and incentive plans. So all the gamut. And let's not forget, there was that little time in 2020 where, I don't know if you heard about it, it's called COVID, where no one had the playbook. So here we are, we're trying to learn as we go. Throughout all of that chaos. But I do believe that it was through that time as well, too, the the culture building and the leadership, at least in the organization I work with, really stepped forward and really brought the organization together. And it created this new level, new momentum in terms of our organizational culture, because we invited vulnerability. We invited people to share not only what are they doing vis-a-vis work, but how are you being? How are you doing vis-a-vis life? And I truly feel that was a pivotal moment.
Before we continue, a quick thank you from our sponsor, OpenElm's Learning Generator. With just a text prompt or document, AI instantly builds a full professional course, complete with video presenters, quizzes, animations, and voiceovers in any language. You can edit everything online and export it as e-learning, a PowerPoint or video. And coming soon, you can even export it as a podcast or video game experience. The best part, you can try it free for 14 days and see how you can use this special agentic AI system to transform your training at openelms.ai. Back to the show.
So let's just
Yeah.
tap into that for a moment then. So you'd say potentially pre the pandemic, there was a kind of HR for people of sorts, but hadn't really tapped in potentially to the well-being of whatever we want to term that as, but the well-being of the employees to a certain extent. Not to say that nobody didn't care, but that there wasn't anything designated specifically to sort of really round that out. And you introduced after this, you introduced a kind of more of a genuine project around this, around transparency and around the well-being of your people. So since then, and since that's been implemented, what kind of things have you noticed in terms of the changes that have taken place?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not that it wasn't part of the makeup, wellness and well-being. It just didn't have the spotlight. It was perhaps a little bit in the background, where this time in all of our lives, it was brought to the foreground. And it was necessary because people were struggling, right?
Absolutely.
Their mental health, and I can share a personal story on that piece a little bit later. But in answer, to your question, I think that's where we really started to shine as an organization, and our culture shifted to one that was very much inclusive and as well creating a space for people to be who they are. Are we perfect? No, but it's growth. It's a journey. It's learning.
Yeah.
But I certainly think and see that it invited employees to come to work as themselves. And one thing that I would always share, and I still do, is it's okay not to be okay. So if you're not having a super great day, someone else is. And that's where the value and the power of teamwork comes in. And this is a mantra that I share with all of the teams that I've fostered throughout the years is we're a village, right? We are a connection, and we are there to have each other's back. So Sally may not be having such a great day, and Joanne may be saying, you know what, let me give you a hand there. Let me help lift you up. And because the phrase that I loved, I didn't coin it, but the competition's outside. And to create an environment where competition is within the walls of your own organization, pitting employee against employee, personally, I'm not signing up for that, right? That's toxic in my belief. So if you really want to grow and expand and innovate, you've got to create that ecosystem where there is foundational, there is trust.
Yeah.
I trust, Andy, that you have my back.
Yeah.
And I have yours, right? And we lift each other up.
And do you feel that's on the whole working? Now, that's not a leading question, but to counteract that, which I think in these cases you kind of have to, because I that philosophy is of course extremely sound, and I don't think anybody in their right mind should argue that that's not a good way to, you know, promote well-being within an organization, and that we're looking out for each other, that we're gonna, you know, I totally get it. Some days I'm having a bad day, someone in my team can pick up that slack. I get brilliant. And what happens when someone doesn't takes advantage of that philosophy? Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, I know that don't need to be on top of my game, and actually, I'm having a bad month, and that bad month turns into 6 months, and that 6 months, I mean, the other people are picking up the slack, but there's this kind of "don't worry, we've got your back" kind of vibe. But it's like, hang on, no.
Yeah.
What do we go? Well, no, that's you're not taking responsibility anymore. You're taking the Mickey. So, you know, where does that fit in?
Oh, that's a terrific point to bring forward. You know, let's not confuse performance with wellness and well-being. Everyone is still expected to deliver. That's why you are there. That's why you were hired. You were hired for your expertise. You were hired for your experience. You're expected to perform.
Yeah.
We just want to create an environment where you thrive.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing your fair share, well, that's a different conversation. Let's not confuse it. And I think in those instances, and thank goodness they're very few, is we've created an environment where people feel more comfortable to be able to kind of call that in and say, hey, you know, we need to address this because, you know, the bulk of the work is falling here, and this is what's happening here. So I do feel, you know, it's quicker to address as a result of inviting people to come forward.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But definitely, let's not confuse performance with well-being.
Absolutely. So we touched on the pandemic, obviously, and there's a lot of organizations, large organizations that I speak with regularly, involved with regularly, but also, you know, through these kind of conversations, I get to know even more. That pandemic really did kind of alter how L&D is delivered and made people really come face to face with the future. The future is kind of now. So how are we going to adapt? Now, some organizations went full throttle one way, do you know what? Everyone can work from home, and we're going to find out, you know, we're going to do this, and it's going to be better for us, and everyone's going to be fine. And then some were like, no, that's not happening, and we're not going to do. So, you know, and there's so many different variants across the world. I'm not as subscribing to any particular model because, you know, everybody knows their organizations and what's best for their people. So right now, what's your balance, and where do you think organizations as complex as the ones you've been involved in, obviously, are finding the right balance right now with working from home, hybrid models, fully inside the buildings? You know, what's working best, and what do you see working best?
Well, for sure, the pandemic was the ultimate experiment in whether or not work from home can work. And I think the global stage proved that it can work, right? It's really interesting to cast a lens on hybrid, fully in office, fully remote. My philosophy is that if you've built and continue to foster the team aspect, that you can achieve anything in any environment. And maybe it comes down to, I've led many teams over the years as a sales director and what have you. And my team was not in office. Everything was done remote. And that was without the technology we have today. That was your simple, phone type of piece. But absolutely, I think sales teams have proven over the years that remote teams work. It comes down to really having the essence of what the expectations are for the team, what the expectations are for the individual. And I do believe that there's a bit of, from the leadership perspective or from a manager's perspective, is you have to be a little bit of an empath as well, too. to some degree,
Yeah.
to pick up on those vibrations that might be coming through. Well, back then it was through the telephone, but here, I'm seeing you right now, and I feel as if we're just across the table
I know.
versus
Is it?
through a screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I feel the connection is there. Personally, I challenge the need to bring everyone back 5 days a week. I'm on the hybrid kind of camp, but everyone needs to do what they believe is right for their organization, as long as they're also making that decision in terms of what is right for the people who are running your organization, who are the engine behind the success. And, all I ask is that leaders, regardless of the decisions you're making, you're doing it with a lens of where does the engine of your organization fit into those decisions? Because that's the essence of your ultimate success,
Absolutely.
in my opinion.
Absolutely. Let's explore that a little bit more then. So obviously over the last few years, you'll have seen learning development change slightly, evolve, revolutionize, whatever you want to call it. So how would an individual within the organization that you're working with, how do you think their L&D pathways have changed over the last few years? Or have they not? Like, it's fine if they haven't. It's like, we've had this model in place for X, Y, Z, and it's working for us and we're continuing with it. Or is there a change that you've seen in fundamental differences in how people adopt L&D, how they adopt, education within your organization?
I would say it has evolved. I think what technology has done for us, it enables us to expand the learning to a broader base. You remember the days pre-pandemic, pre-Teams and Zoom. You'd have a select number of folks who would come in to, whether it's the head office or to an offsite, and you have 3-4 days of learning. But it was a finite group, and one could argue, okay, it's focused on this group, it's focused on this group. And those were fantastic. I think what was great about that is that true face-to-face, that, continued opportunity to build relationships even after the course is complete. But what tech has enabled us to do is to reach more people at the same time. What I love about the tech and how L&D has evolved, at least within our organization, it's brought together different divisions. So leaders from different divisions coming together via Zoom for, particular learning or what have you. And I'm from an organization that has 3 distinct divisions. Back in the old days, back in the day, that was, coming together face to face was not going to be cross division. Even just recently, we created a leadership program through Zoom. And it was the invitation initially when we were building it. We thought, well, we'll do it by division and see what's what. It was actually the leaders themselves, because we did a bit of a focus group as we were testing this through. And they said, no, we want to come together. We want to learn cross-divisionally, cross-functionally, because we all have something different to offer. So I think that's the beauty of tech and how it's enabled and really expanded the opportunity for learning.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, if you think, because you can be very skilled in a certain subject or or in a certain skill, and it doesn't necessarily make you a good manager. It doesn't necessarily make you a leader, right? And so it would make sense that if you're going to join a program with other people from the organization, that you're going to learn skills that perhaps even though you might be in that position, you might not naturally feel as though you are good in certain aspects of that role, right? Because you don't, there's particular skills that just people don't automatically get taught. Like, how to become a good leader? Be a manager. You're a manager now. Go and do it. And you're like, how do I do that?
Well, yeah, manager doesn't equal leader.
No.
Right? Leader is not a title, as you know. I mean, we've had conversations like this in the past. Leader does not mean a title. Leader is behavior. Leader is action. all of these things. So you can move into a manager role and be an abysmal leader, and vice versa. Right? Right. You could just not lead as well. I think it's that distinction between manager and leader. I do have to say, I scratch my head sometimes when people are equating the two. And I can't believe, with all the leadership expertise and models that have been shared throughout the years, that this is still there. But it goes to show we're all still human, and we still have a lot to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, and it's true. I mean, I've been in many a meeting with leaders to know that it's not quite what it's on the tin. Right, but so if you could go back and tell yourself, a younger self of how people really learn and grow in complex organizations, what would you say to them?
I would say it starts with you. And where I go with that is, we all as humans have the ultimate potential. It is within us. How we are wired and our experiences, etc., shapes us to thinking that the control is external to us versus internal. And in my earlier years of my career, I was reactive. I was thinking, oh, it's my boss's job to promote me, and if he doesn't do it, that's on him, it's not on me. So I would definitely tell my younger self to really tap in what that self-reflection is for. And it is for you to take a step back, take a moment in time to understand, say there was a particular situation, what part of this do I own and what am I going to do about it? Because that's the only thing that you can control. We can't control others, but we can control how we react to others. And I feel that has been, as I learned to develop that skill, that has really been the turning point for me in developing my leadership, because it also creates more, what's the word? It creates more capacity to learn and appreciate others and to listen to their experiences, listen to their commentary, and to build that out versus being reactive, versus being ready to defend. Be ready to receive. And I found that that has helped me. It's also how I also help my clients. I'm an executive coach, and helping them to tap into what it is they control and the opportunity within that. It's freeing, to be quite honest, because you're not living in this world of victim, right?
Well, no, I think that's an interesting. It's an interesting word you used at the end there. I've had conversations. So let's draw into that, because obviously you in organizations like the ones you've got experience with, there's a huge array of different people from different cultures, different ages and stages, and so how do you adopt a strategy which reaches to all of those different variants effectively, and also how how are you addressing the kind of differences between someone coming in fresh from school, college, university with a slightly different mindset potentially than someone who's been with you for a number of years, and how do you bridge that gap? And so let's try and explore that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I have seen, as part of, creating strategies for inclusion and diversity with organization, is to intentionally, excuse me, intentionally bring these groups together with the idea that they can learn from each other. So it's almost at the outset just tearing down the perceived silos between the groups. if I may, if I can go in a bit of a tangent, I was at a conference, I think it was last year, and there was the conversation about the different generations. And so you had one generation each, three of them on the stage. And it was interesting to see, because I just sat back and I watched the dynamic of the audience, who were mostly in the Gen X kind of phase, and they shut down. They weren't even open to receiving the information that was being shared by, is it Gen Z now? The latest one, which was truly fascinating for me, just from a human behavior standpoint, because they're trying to share with you how they see the world, how they see the workplace, and you need to just take away your blinders for a minute and just listen. And that's what I meant, Andy, by be open to receive. And the adage that you have to, people are always thinking about their response versus actually listening. That's a skill. If you can master that, oh gosh, your world opens up. So just get out of your own head and listen. Because I learned so much from that conference just by receiving and not reacting. Because, I think that's the key to really opening things up. Because there's so much to be learned, so much to innovate when you bring multi-generations together. I mean, just imagine. I mean, my own children, I learned so much from them. They teach me about, tech and all of these things, but then I share back, not just as a mom, but as a leader as well too. And to be able to have those open dialogues. So can you imagine the power within an organization when you bring multi-generations together and just tapping into all that knowledge and experience in the room? Like,
Yeah.
just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you managed to incorporate a listening pillar to your organization, in terms of like, this is a core strength that we want people to adopt? Is there anything in there at the moment about that? Or is that, something you're trying to do but within the training itself?
We do it within the training itself, but I think there's always room to tap into new tools and opportunities to even foster that further. We do have business resource groups as well, and one is multi-generational, if we're just going to focus in that topic for a moment. So they do a fantastic job of bringing learnings to the organization as well. We lean on them. So, we have the learning and development portion, but we also have the experience and the events that our employees bring to us. So again, it's that co-creation. Learning and development doesn't need to come from a function or a department. It can come from anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just to pivot slightly towards just see any of your experiences. We've kind of touched on technology a little bit here, but I wanted to know if you've had any experience of rolling out a kind of a technology across the organization and the lessons you learned from it. Like, is that something that you've ever had to do, in terms of like, not necessarily your responsibility for the technology, but you were utilizing an L&D strategy by utilizing the technology, and it was going to reach a lot of people. And what did you learn from that? And like, positive or negative in that respect?
I think that's more in development right now, Andy, to say that we've rolled out. Well, maybe it's not so much the L&D space, but it is about growth opportunities. And we have rolled out over the course of the last year a program through Eightfold, whereby you can post opportunities, you can post, jobs, so to speak, but they're not jobs in the formal sense. They're project teams that are seeking certain skill sets. And what this has enabled is to reach out across the organization, and it's done like a posting, and it shares what the project's all about, what skill set they're looking for, a defined period of time. And someone from anywhere in the organization can raise their hand and share some interest. And I think what is great about this particular approach, it enables you to either use skill sets that you already have and you're offering this to the project team. And then at the same time, by being part of it, you learn on your own as well. So case in point, when it first launched, I thought, well, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring here and see what this is all about so I can share it with others. And there was a particular project that was looking for someone who had launch experience. Well, in my commercial side, I've launched numerous products over time, and building out your, marketing plan, so to speak. So I joined this team, and so I was able to offer my experiences and, help them to build out what that strategic plan should look like. But at the same time, I was learning so much about, how you run this at a global level, what sort of, hoops that you have to go through, etc. So that's something that we've certainly have been successful with, and it's a great way to just meet new people from across the globe. Again, going back to what the value of tech brings, right? There's no way I would have met Manuela from Brazil in any other capacity.
Well, I get you. Yeah, absolutely. There's open doors, obviously, for you, for other members of the organization in that respect.
Yes. For sure. It's for everyone.
We won't spend much longer on technology. We'll go down some other roads. But just finally on the technology side, like obviously the rise and continuing rise of artificial intelligence breeds, opportunities, risks, and everything in between. Is that something that, you've adopted strategies around, are restricting, or, where are you with that at the moment, I suppose? And, what are your thoughts on how it will impact not just your particular L&D space, but just generally L&D across, the globe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I personally believe AI could be a powerful tool. I believe we are all in a similar boat in terms of still trying to understand it, because it's when you say, how are you implementing AI in your organization? That is a really big topic. It's, can we break that down a little bit? And I was with a group of CHROs not long ago giving a keynote, and we started to talk about AI. We were all in early stages, yet within that early stage at different levels. I think there's so much to be learned. We have incorporated AI within the function, within the organization. Like I said, it's early days. And of course, not of course, but there are restrictions as well too, given our industry, it's life sciences. So you want to ensure that you're protecting your data just as any other organization would do. So I think there's opportunity. We shouldn't go into it blindly, and we shouldn't just throw everything to AI as the panacea of everything. Because in the end, going back to my mantra, I don't believe AI will ever replace people. I think how roles will evolve will be impacted by AI. However, the critical thinking, the compassion, the empathy that come from human beings, you can't get that from the machine.
I mean, I 100% agree. I think
right.
we have I work it's a learning technology company, right? And we've had to adopt AI and AI elements and look at them effectively for how it can bring our products, our offering further. Because if we ignore it, we will just get left behind. I think
Right.
one of our philosophies internally is that, I agree with you. I don't think AI is not there to replace people's job. AI is agnostic. AI is just AI. I think what will probably happen
Right.
is that people who use AI effectively in the future will replace those who don't use AI at all. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's part of the human journey in terms of humans will always need humans. So whilst we've developed these systems, which are incredible, and they really are, the stuff that our stuff does now even blows my mind. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
just wow. And but when we implement them into large, complex organizations, which we do on a weekly, monthly basis, it's the power of the people coming together, learning it, adopting it, and rolling it out and making it work is the most powerful bit. Not the the technology, wow, but how people then use it to further themselves, advance themselves, is more powerful than the technology that they're using. Do you know what I mean? So they kind of work hand in hand to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, fully agree. It is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's one belief about learning development that you used to hold strongly, but you've completely changed your mind about?
That's a great question. I don't know if my belief has changed, but here's what I believe. When it comes to learning and development, regardless of your level, there is always something to learn. And I challenge those who's, if there's a particular learning and development offering, I've already done that. I know what I need, or I know what I'm doing. That's the one I would watch out for, because they've just stated right there that their mindset is not open to, open to growth or trying new things. Because no matter how many leadership, development programs I've been on, I always learn something new. Always. And I mean, I've been doing this for many, many years. There's always something to learn, and that comes back to full circle about the self-reflection and the open to receiving. He's going into a particular, mandated L&D program that your organization said, no, all leaders at this level need to take it. If you're going in saying, I have to, well, you're going to be miserable for however long the program's going to be. If you go in with a mindset that says, let's be open to receive and take the information and reflect on how it can make you a better leader, that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's very, very fair. When you're talking have you ever come across? Obviously, you would never name names or who they work for, but obviously you're well networked. You'll be speaking with other leaders in the space, whether it be at conferences or just generally in your working life. Have you seen any things where what are the biggest mistakes you've come across that you've seen that potentially other people are making, or other things that you've seen? Like, is there anything that's made you kind of put your alarm bells on and go, oof, I wouldn't be doing that in my organization? Again, I appreciate no names and no organizations, but can you think of any examples?
I could probably think of a lot of examples. Probably, making a decision that really hasn't been thought through, and I call it the red thread, where it includes the impact on the people within the organization. Let's see, case in point, if you're making decisions about an organizational structure and on paper it looked great. Okay, let's go, let's implement. And as you're implementing, you realize a tremendous gap in the impact this has to the people within the organization. And I don't just mean like downsizing or what have you, but there's a gap in terms of, well, how is the continuity of this from the strategy to execution going to be maintained? So I have seen that, and it takes more effort to correct than putting in the time to really think that through. And perhaps that's the crux of it. Is I appreciate that businesses need to move fast. I appreciate that leaders need to make quick decisions. That's the world we're in. It has to move quickly, but you have to have that litmus test of that red thread and the impact to the engine, as I mentioned earlier, of your organization. Otherwise, anything that's said on paper that looks fantastic has a risk of really being successful.
Yeah, wow. And also,
does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And also, there's a red thread sticking out. Then when it, how long does it take to unravel? And then there's a lot of cleanup to be done.
Yeah.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to try and fit in 2 questions if we can. For any L&D leaders who are new to the space, I say L&D leaders, but L&D managers or people who are taking on L&D roles, in a senior perspective, with everything that's happening in the space, what would be your most practical piece of advice to someone kind of new into that area?
Probably, if it's someone new into the space, is, clearly understand what is the mission of the organization, what is the mission of the business. I think that's cost of entry. You need to know the business. And perhaps that's where my own experience coming from the business side, coming into an HR type of role, is that, those, and this is not to dismiss anyone who's a professional in the HR function, but it's integral to really understand what is happening in the business. What is happening to the people who are closest to the customer? What is a day in the life of? Because sometimes as L&D leaders, we get, trapped into building this amazing program, and it really is, but is it really meeting the need of the customer? And, it's that's something that I've challenged the team with year on year, because, it might, going back, might sound great on paper, but is that really meeting the need of the customer? So get to know your customer, and in our space, that's our business. That's our people who are closest to the customer. So that would be my next piece of advice.
You're right. You've got to get gritty with your company. You've got to get a few bruises, before you start implementing strategies. I've seen that a lot, actually. New people into HR or new HR strategies coming in, and you go, these are the best strategies that you'll ever come across. But if you don't understand the company you're trying to implement it, and you don't actually understand the ins and the outs and what makes people tick, it's just hot air.
Listen, if you want a seat at the table, you got to know what's being served.
Yeah, and plus people will only respond to people who understand what they're going through. So, and that's more powerful when you're living it with them, right? And okay, last one. What's the one thing that you want anyone who hears what you've had to say today to remember most?
Be vulnerable, and by that, really ensure when you're building yourself as a leader, this is not a power play. This is an opportunity to guide, influence, mentor, and that is most successful when we appreciate what we have to offer, when we continuously reflect and grow and be open to receiving. And why I also say vulnerability is there is no one who is perfect, right? And the more we show our true authentic selves, the greater the movement, so to speak, with those who are in your circle. I'm not sure if there's time, but in my own experience, I've dealt with my own issues with mental health, and it was during the pandemic that I collapsed, and I live with depression, and it was at that point I said I need to get help, and then I shared it. I shared my experiences, and I was so scared. So scared. I thought, oh gosh, this is this is a career killer. But it opened up the whole network that I'm living in and breathing in, to show that leaders aren't perfect. And the more you tap in and appreciate that we are all humans, we're all trying to do what we need to do, that's more powerful than coming across as if you know everything and you're just trying to puppeteer your organization.
People learn from people, right? And I think as I kind of touched on what kind of briefly touched a minute ago, which was, people respond better to people who've got the bumps and the bruises, who've got a lived experience which resonate with. Like, I know a lot of people, not just yourself, I know a lot of people who suffered from depression during that time and still continue to have issues to this day, because it's a real, something that doesn't just disappear just because you've spoken about it. You're like, oh, okay, talked about it now. I'm fine.
I'm good.
It's an ongoing thing, right? And so, so I think what makes people stronger through it, though, is that when they share these things, they realize, actually, I'm not alone in this. And when people hear people in positions of seniority talk about these things, that makes them feel, again, I'm not alone in this. There's other people and that makes, and whilst you're going through it and you're talking about the vulnerability and thinking, is this career suicide? I'm sharing this with my seniors, my people, and they might be like, right, probably better get rid of her. And actually, what resonated was actually that this is something that we need to utilize, adopt something around, which is why the sound of it, what you've hopefully been able to do, which will then help other people moving forward.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you for sharing that, Janine.
Well, thank you.
You'll be grateful to hear the end of the talk and the interview. And thank you for that. Really, really helpful. I'm sure that it will be very well received by the people who listen to it and hear about your experiences and what you've managed to achieve.
Many thanks for listening to this episode of the Future of Learning podcast. And now, a final word from our prehistoric sponsors of today's episode.
My students use AI for answers. I stick to my 1985 encyclopedia set. Those facts, they don't expire.